We're going to talk about Clifford Lynn Dickey, the Packer QB, from acquired by Houston in '76, and he played for Green Bay for 9 years, '76 to '85. He taught me a lot of football. I didn't know jack in that locker room, and he would sit there late in the afternoon and early evening and talk ball with me, diagram stuff on my notebook. He's a great man. I owe him a lot. He's a terrific guy, man. Okay, so how did it end for Clifford Lynn? Um, they played Tampa Bay on December 1, 1985, and Green Bay had been 8-8 in. They had horrible teams his first 4 or 5 years, and then Bob Schnelker came to join Bart Starr's offensive coordinator, and they became a really good offensive team. John Jefferson, Paul Kaufman, and James Lofton. Man, that was the best in the league. And Dickey could throw the ball beautifully anywhere on the field. Great, great arm. So in '82, they make the Super Bowl tournament. They go 6-3, maybe. I can't remember. And they win a playoff game in '82. Then in '83, they go 8-8. '84, they go 8-8. '85, they go 8-8. They're mired at 500 3 years in a row. So the last two of those years are forced, Greg. So on December 1 of '85, they're playing Tampa Bay in a foot of snow. That's the Snow Bowl. And Lynn goes the distance, and they beat the Bucks 21-0. And Forrest really praised him after that game. Played a terrific game. So now we're going to go to Thursday of that week. They're going to play Miami, and they did play Miami that day. That's next Sunday, December 8th. This is when there was lots of snow in Green Bay in that time, Tyler. We're going to get to the snow in a second. Okay, and they lost to Dan Marino and the Dolphins 34-24, but Dickey was not in the lineup. That's a week after the Buck when he was terrific. So what happened? He suffered a neck injury lifting weights on that Thursday, and he was ruled doubtful on Saturday, and then he didn't play. So they started Jim Zorn. And Jim Zorn, the lefty ex Seattle, he was terrible. His balls would nosedive short into the dirt. It was awful. Little left-hander. I mean, he had a lot around. No, he had enough around him. He was awful. But Forrest wanted to see, All right, now the next day they're going over to Pontiac, Silverdome, play the Lions on December 15. And Dickey's okay to play. But Forrest starts Jim Zorn. So lots of snow. I remember the snowbanks then, maybe still left over from that blizzard against Tampa 3-4 days earlier. Maybe 8-inch snowbanks. And going on to Hinkle Field, the grass practice next to the Hudson Center wasn't there, next to the barn. They had another corrugated metal barn there on that property right there. And we're coming in off of the Armed Forces Street. And I'm walking down with the players, or I parked my car over by the Brown County Arena, and I'm coming over, got my sorrel boots on, and a pencil because pens would freeze. And I'm crossing the street, and there's Lynn Dickey. And he's got that draw. Oh, Bob, how you doing, man? So I said, okay. So we're going in the gate, and he looks down to his left, and a dog had, we'll say, urinated on the snowbank. Right next to where the players were trooping in, And Dickey looks down there and he says, that's what they think of me right there. It's like the yellow. So anyway, he doesn't play. Now the next week, they're going down to Tampa. They're finishing at Tampa on December something or other, the 16th, I guess. They beat the Lions 26-23. So they're going down, final game before Christmas, 12-22 at the Big Sombrero against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who they just whitewashed in the Snow Bowl. So Forrest takes him to Vero Beach, Florida, and Dodger Town, where the Dodgers have trained forever and ever. Beautiful. Weather's like, it was kind of cool, like 70. So Press Gazette sends me down there. So, so they're all available, I mean, it's just, I'm the only writer down there. This is a lost season, of course. They're eliminated from everything. And now where is this? I got so much stuff I dug out of the file here, Tyler. Here we go. So Dateline Vero Beach. Dickey feels snubbed. That's the headline in the Saturday edition of the Press Gazette. I mean, you could go talk to all these players. There was no tape recorders. You're taking hand notes, I mean, they all know me because I was hanging around every day out there. Access was great. It just wasn't that big of a deal. The money wasn't there. So I said to Dickey, I mean, he probably had his best game of the year in the Blizzard Bowl. And so I remembered the comment about the piss, the yellow piss in the snow. And I asked him about it. And he says, quote, this is in the story, I went from the wizard in the blizzard to a piece of yellow snow. Dickey said with a wry grin. Then I said, well, are you going to play next year? He said he didn't really know. He said, what are they going to trade me for? A roll of tape? The market for 36-year-old quarterbacks isn't much. So let me just tell you how this thing was run in those days, Tyler. So the Packers then, he's the first guy to have a six-figure base salary in Green Bay. I remember he made $100K, I think in 77. I think that's right. Maybe 78. Yeah. The first guy to make 100 in Green Bay. So, well, they had to make a decision by February 1 whether to give him a qualifying offer. So Dickey made $850 in this final in 85. Okay. And so in order to keep him, they had to give him a qualifying offer of 205. 205. Well, they made the qualifying offer. I called Lynn at his house in Kansas City. I said, well, how much more was it? He said, well, it wasn't a minimum, but boy, was it close. I mean, you couldn't get any closer. And Chuck Hutchison was Greg's money guy. And I asked Chuck, these people return calls then. I said, well, Chuck, what about this qualifying offer to Dickey? And Hutchinson says, I said, what does it mean? He said, that means we wanted to retain the rights to him. That's what it meant, period. So then what happened? The Packers signed Vince Ferragamo. They had just signed him a couple days earlier. So they got Zorn, Randy Wright, Vince Ferragamo. And okay, what are they going to do with Dickey going into 86? They signed him to a deal for, I don't know, $250 or something. So Dickey comes to town in June and he meets with Hutchison and he wants to play again. All right. He wants to play. And he comes up with all these different things. If games I missed, you don't have to pay me. I'm reading the story here after they cut him. You don't have to pay me. He met for 45 minutes with Hutchison on Tuesday, 45 more minutes on Wednesday. Hutchison, he returned my call. He said, we agreed to disagree. What did Dickey say? I hope I'm not going on too long, but he just couldn't do it. So I'm there. Dickey walked into the locker room, pausing to wish well to Randy Wright, his potential successor. Shortly after noon, the quarterback praised by Greg less than a year ago as the equal to any he had ever been associated with. Think Ken Anderson in Cincinnati. Are you kidding me? He left for the final time. Quote, I went up there with the full intention of doing everything I could to sign, but I could tell right off it wasn't going to work. It doesn't take a genius to figure out things have been money oriented there the last couple of years. I didn't feel like I deserved to take a tremendous cut in salary. So Tyler, Lynn wanted to play. Did he have a market? No, he was never signed. No. So he never practiced after he saw the yellow snow. He never practiced again after hurting that neck in the weight room, and then Forrest and Chuck, and then they went on with Wright, Zorn, and whoever else they had. They were 4-12 in '86. They would have loved to have been 8-8 as they were the previous 3 years. It was a mess. Greg went '86 and '87. Then Lindy and Fonnie came in. That was Loab. They had no idea what they were doing. They were pinching pennies. They had a bad stadium, but no money, poor management, poor work at the president's level. Greg was his own GM, had no idea, over his head in that regard. Hutchison was a guy who had played for Greg in Cleveland as an offensive lineman. He was just a bean counter, did what Forrest told him. It was a mess. And Dickey, maybe had he been in a different situation, he had so many injuries, but the guy he threw the ball as well as anybody I ever covered. That's the truth. He did, Tyler.
Really?
Great touch, not only strength of arm and touch, and throw those 22-yard digs to Lofton like you can't believe. And the pounding he would take when it was open season on him. Yeah, Dickey was a really good player. He had horrible injuries, a busted leg, broken hip. I mean, he had concussions, neck injuries, all this stuff. He's quite a guy, though. Yep.
I'm here for all the Lynn Dickey stories. That was phenomenal. I talked to him a few times back at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and I can vaguely remember him not having very nice things to say about Forrest Gregg. Loved Bart Starr as a coach.
Yeah.
Not so much with Forrest. And there's why. Hey, and moral of the story, if you're a starting quarterback in the NFL, maybe don't lift weights during the season. Just do some push-ups. throw around some 5-pound dumbbells or something like that. Alrighty, for this entire episode of the Ty and Bob Pod, subscribe to GoLongTD.com today. You'll get every episode of every podcast, every team deep dive, every player profile. Your investment is always put to good use. I'm traveling around the country trying to deliver the NFL in the real and the raw, always through a long-form lens. Thank you so much for your support. We're completely powered by you. We'll catch you next time.